This is our third rally in a series. We had 2 previous rallies at Fairlife headquarters. And as many of you know, Fairlife is in the crosshairs of the largest dairy abuse case in history. Motherhood is something to be honored, not exploited, regardless of species. Regardless of species. Bodies are not commodities. Their bodies, not ours.
Bodies are not commodities. Their bodies, not ours.
Dairy is built on the separation of mothers and newborns. There is no humane dairy.
So these days, as my kids get older, as the planet gets hotter, and as wild animal species dwindle and are replaced by humans and their domesticated animals, I begin to reflect on what motherhood really means. It's about nurturing, it's about protectiveness, a certain amount of selflessness. These days, I think those values would be best served by not having our own children, but perhaps adopting or nurturing the planet and inhabitants in a more encompassing way.
I remember experiencing separation anxiety when I drop off my kids on their first day of preschool. I remember tears coming down from my face as I leave them at school. All I could think about was, are they going to be okay? What if they cry for me? What if they get hungry, or what if they get hurt and they need mommy? Animals are no different from us. Have you seen footages of a mother cow being in distress as her baby being hauled away from her? Mother cow sometimes even escapes their cages and walk for miles in search for her baby. Have you seen footage of both a mother cow and a calf crying for each other, which lasts many days?
From that day in 2013 when I talked to my friend Tom, I learned how vegans try not to hurt animals by consuming them in any way, shape, or form. I like animals, all animals. But to be quite honest with you, I don't like to pet them, and I don't like to own them. I wish we could all live our lives in peace. I can't control all the craziness in the world, but I can control the choices that I make. I want to make choices that don't harm others, whether human or animal. I want to show kindness in my actions towards humans and animals. That's why I'm vegan.
I didn't even know what veganism was as a kid. I just knew I had a connection to animals. Like when I was 6, I would go to the park and feed a squirrel. It was just something that was in me. And so people ask me, how did you raise your kids vegan? And I mean, for me, when they were in school, if they had parties, I would literally take the time to go up there and take vegan pizza or vegan ice cream, because it was just that important for me to make sure that my kids were not cast out away from the other kids, that they felt part of the crowd, but also we were still holding up to our, standards and how we live.
So the day after I gave birth to my daughter, we were sitting in the hospital and on the hospital bed, and I was making funny faces at her, and she was looking at me, and she was all curious and everything. But then a second later, it changed, and her face turned purple, and she stopped breathing, and she started flailing around. And I obviously panicked, and I pressed the button on the wall, the emergency button, and immediately a group of doctors rushed in, and they grabbed her, and then they rushed out, and I had no idea what was happening. And I was so confused and worried that I completely disregarded all of the pain I was feeling from having just given birth that night. And I got up out of the bed and I limped around the hospital trying to find her. And I finally did find her, and she obviously survived. But those feelings were so bad, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. I felt scared, overwhelmed, confused, helpless, empty, broken. And I can guarantee that those are the same feelings that mother cows experience in the dairy industry over and over and over and over again.
There is no valid argument to justify this.
And this is one of the reasons why I'm vegan and activist. Because no mother or child deserves to be tortured and abused and separated and killed. Every glass of milk or a slice of cheese cost the life of living beings who were tortured, abused, and killed. Those living beings feel pain as much as you and I do. Right. Living beings who did not want to die. Therefore, I encourage the dairy industry to label their products with the truth. Because dairy contains rape, torture, abuse, stolen babies, grieving mothers, murder, cancer, and further disease. Please do not support the dairy industry. As vegan, we won't stop fighting against animal abuse and cruelty. This movement is unstoppable. Thank you.
When Robert asked me to talk about dairy alternatives, I was reminded of my initial dairy experience, which happened over 3 decades ago when I had my baby daughter. I brought my daughter home from the hospital. I gave her a bottle of Similac, and she stopped breathing. To my horror, I didn't know what happened. I called 911. I did the mouth-to-mouth. She started breathing again. And then when I took my newborn baby to the doctor the next day, I found out she had a cow's milk allergy, which caused her to stop breathing.
Since we had companion animals at home, we taught the kids from a very early age on how to care for them and treat them with respect. Through their growing up years, we exposed them through movies, documentaries, videos, and books, all the adverse aspects of using animals, including cruelty, the effects on human health, human poverty, and the environment. We included them in our animal rights activism and rewarded them by stopping by at a vegan restaurant so that they create fond memories of activism and eagerly participated instead of being forced.
And so one of the common questions that I get from parents is, well, doesn't my child need milk? Because, milk does the body great, as the commercials say. Well, I had milk for a great deal of my childhood, and it doesn't help you grow. Otherwise, I wouldn't be so short, right? So you can be perfectly fine. Actually, the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is the governing body for pediatricians or just for the care of children throughout the country, it actually has stated that vegetarian and vegan diets can be healthy for children as long as they're well balanced and well planned out. That goes for any diet, correct? Yeah. So if the American Academy has sanctioned eating this way, why don't more of us do this for our children?
Humane dairy is a lie.
Animals do not want to die.
Humane dairy is a lie.
Animals do not want to die.
Not your mom.
Not your milk.